build isn't working out for me. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to change my role and be a little bit more tanky instead of being full DPS. Stuff like that. Obviously, if that's the path you take, it won't end up optimal for you, but at least you have that option without sacrificing a lot for yourself. So that to me it's a really important thing, and I like it a lot. Um, let's see. We'll go back and address all these things. What do I think about some moves scaling with level? I think to a certain degree they have to, but at the same time, a lot of moves already scale with attack damage and ability power. Like I know, I'm a huge Illidan fanboy, so I know that Illidan's his Q scales with attack damage, and so like there's that. Like that's a thing that I like to see. I love the ability mods, but I feel like those are some of the talents that will be biased. Yeah, I guess I don't really have a counter argument to that. I mean, bias is kind of in the eye of the beholder, so it comes as it comes. But let's move on because pretty much the first three sections here that I'm going to talk about are just they're literally just talking about. Oh, I missed this screen. Sorry. Oh right, ponies, mounts. That's a thing that I want to talk about because we did have a thread on Reddit recently about that, which was saying, well, do you guys like mounts? What do you want to see? Would it be better to have just boots? Would it be better to have a flat movement speed base? And any of you that go on Reddit, you've seen my response. Probably, maybe you might not recognize my names on there, but I've responded to it and I said that movement speed is a really important thing. It's a really, really important thing in MOBAs because not only is it the way that you are able to do damage to things, it's also the way that you're able to move around the map and kind of get into and out of position. And that second part is really important because if you're caught out of position, oh man, are you going to suffer. So having the ability to have your mount in the game is super important. I mean, you don't have boots in the game, you don't have items, so you do need another way to kind of zoom around the map. Obviously, Abathur is kind of one of his own. He could just burrow and be popping up everywhere, which I personally think is kind of broken, but whatever. We'll see how it goes. And I think that mounts are a great addition to the game because they fit with the majority of the lore. Not that lore matters in Heroes, but it's there, and I like it. I like it more than the idea of having boots and having to go back and buy items and all whatever. So that's that. I'd love to talk about that with you guys more in detail, but let's move on to what's going to be, in my opinion, the biggest draw of this game. So yeah, let's get this. Map objectives. They are kind of a big deal, and by kind of a big deal, I mean they're huge. They're like crazy important. And using Dragonshire again as the example here, I'm going to basically derail everything that I had planned just to talk about this. So on Dragonshire, for those of you that don't know and haven't watched the video, there are two shrines that unlock the Dragonite. And what that means is that the map is designed like this. It's three-pronged. It has top, middle, and bottom lanes. And in top lane, there's a shrine. In bottom lane, there's also a shrine. In the middle, there's the Dragonite. So what you have to do is you have to stand on the shrine like any other thing and capture it. If you capture both shrines for your team, the Dragonite will unlock. You can go down and you can get transformed into the Dragonite, which is awesome in itself. But the sheer amount of board control that you get from that, or whatever you want to call it, map presence, it's absurd. Like it's this crazy behemoth that just lets you wreck everything. So you want it. You obviously want it. You don't want the other team to get that. But again, as we said, I wish I had a diagram so that I could show you guys. As we said, you have to control both shrines while you're trying to capture the Dragonite. Like that's important. So the way that the map works is basically you put at least one person up top, at least one person at bottom, and at least one person in mid. Standard because, you know, experience, as we talked about earlier. But then at the same time, you typically want to have at least one of your lanes, either top or bottom, to be stronger so that the other team doesn't have the ability to dominate both lanes and get both shrines. Because once they have both shrines, they can choose one of two options basically: defend the shrines and try to take the dragon with 3 other people, or basically just rush it in, get the dragon, and move on. We see, I don't know if you guys watched the video for the devs, but kind of both of those situations happened. There was one where some people stayed off and tried to defend the shrines while their team captured the dragon. Didn't work out so hot. And then there was another one where they tried to rush the dragon. Also didn't work out so hot. So it can work in both ways. It kind of depends on your team comp. But the biggest thing here is, now think about how experience works, right? So experience is you have everybody near stuff, you get experience. That's great. So let's say you capture one shrine and you're about to capture the second shrine. Good. Okay, you did it. You have 2 shrines now in your power, and you elect to take the second path where you pull all of your resources, meaning all of your heroes, into the mid lane, and you try to get the dragon. Like that's your goal. That's what you really, really want. That's what you go for. Now, what you're doing is you're pooling all of your resources into one area, which means if the enemy team is of equal experience with you and they're really, really close to you in that regard, and they send one person to top to try to just break your shrine, and they accomplish it because you get stalled on dragon and you don't have enough time to capture the dragon, that automatically puts you behind in terms of experience, and it also puts you pretty wildly out of position. Now, normally in a MOBA, this would be like awful, like absolutely terrible. The difference with heroes, though, is that the mid lane in Dragonshire is like this big. Like, I kid you not, it's like that big. Meanwhile, the other lanes are like this. So having all 5 people in mid, it's not as bad because it does allow you to put pressure if you want to just go absolutely zerg down mid. That's great. So there you do have that option, but it becomes kind of a calculated risk. Like if you want to push in and take your time to take that tower, to take that fort, then that's great. But at the same time, you're going to be losing a sizable amount of experience because, again, all 5 of your people are in one area. So this is where the trade-offs come in Heroes. There's a lot of times where in other MOBAs you'll have points where this happens, but because everybody's still gaining experience together, because they're killing things and they're being around it so they get equal experience, that it doesn't really affect the game that much. Again, Heroes, this is going to be totally different. So if you make this push and you fail at it, while the other team has people that are outside tracking or getting experience for your team, like crazy matchups that can happen. There's just so much that can be changed because the risk you take at trying to siege something and failing is massive to me. And I'm going to use that to segue into the way that lanes are going to work out when we're in this game. So again, Dragonshire, still on mid lane. When you push mid lane, there's this thing that I noticed immediately. Like, the game is super fast and the pushing is pretty quick, but at the same time, the towers aren't anywhere near what we've seen. They have ammunition, and blew my mind the first time I saw it. But what it does is it forces the enemies, both sides enemies, to be almost constantly aggressive. Because if you're not constantly aggressive, what that's going to do is it's going to end up depleting the ammunition in your tower, which does regenerate, but it's pretty slow. And it's going to allow the enemy team to just say, okay, well, that tower's pretty low on ammo. I mean, it's not going to hit me if I hit it, so I'll just go siege it. And so in current MOBAs, there's a couple characters that basically have to play passive. They just sort of, they sit back and they wait until level 7, level 8, level 9, or when a jungler decides to, show up in their lane and kind of dominate all the things. And that's kind of, at least in my eyes right now, the way that Heroes differentiates itself. It pulls itself away from that. It says, you know what? I want this game to be a fighter. I want people to be fighting constantly. I want them to just be punching each other in the head until they're satisfied. And that's awesome to me. So like pushing and creep control is going to be super super important in this game. If you don't have the ability to constantly push back against someone that's just shoving your wave into your tower, that's going to be like awful. It's going to be terrible because not only are they going to be able to shove the wave into your tower, it's going to force you to come out of your protective zone, try to stop it, and when you do that, that's when you open yourself up for just a crazy engagement. And if you happen to not do that, then they can just take the other route and say, okay, well, they're playing really passive. I'll just take their tower. And it doesn't really take much to take down towers in this game. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, oh man, can you imagine if tower ammo didn't regenerate? Good lord, like that. Oh, they're like, oh, my tower's out. That's it. Game over. I guess I'll just wait until they knock it down. At least maybe I was seeing things, but in the dev games I saw towers regenerating. I could be wrong. Don't know. So that's my take on that. Let's move on to another subject really quick, if I can find where I put my handy dandy notebook. Drop the bottom of this. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go to map selection in a second. I know I said I would talk about that, and I will, because that's actually a really, really important thing to me as a competitive gamer and kind of a long time person who competed on many, many maps. But for right now, let's get into the overall thing. So I've talked back and forth about certain things that you guys may or may not have agreed with, and yeah, you have to bring ammo to the tower. You're like an ammo supplier. So I've talked about things you guys may or not agree with, but overall, I want to really force this point that the way the game has kind of come off to me is basically just saying, okay, this is going to be a brawler. There's not going to be downtime. The game starts, and you are fighting from the second the game starts. Like, characters hit hard. Heroes hit hard. And there's some seriously, seriously awesome stuff. The squishies are squishy. The tanks, pretty tanky, still do a decent amount of damage. Supports, awesome spells. Specialists, amazing. Like, goddamn amazing. Like, I can't even... so, like, that aside, it's just something that... Oh, he wants back in? Are you serious? Come in, Your Majesty. So that aside, the biggest thing about that whole brawler mentality is that you're going to have to be able to put up with that during the game, and you're also going to have to be able to give it out really, really well, and you're going to have to give yourself a lot of risks in this game. There's definitely going to be times where you want to deny someone, and if you don't know where the enemy is, oh boy, are you about to get hurt. Like, it's going to be rough. And with that, I also want to say that the bush system in this game too, it's very League-like. It works the same way, but the positioning of the bushes is like, it's vicious. It's really, really mean. The bushes are like right on the lanes, and they're just, you could just get jumped from any angle. It's awesome. Dragonshire especially, like, you look at mid lane and you see just people popping out left and right. If you're standing in the middle of mid lane, you are vulnerable from like 10 different angles, all kinds of bad stuff. Alright. So let's bring it back. I'm gonna calm down, and I'm gonna start talking about esports stuff. Can we have multiple maps and still make this game an esport? Yes, we can. And here's why. So people like to say that more maps, generally speaking now, it doesn't work with MOBAs. It doesn't. You can't do it that way. It has to be really static. It has to have a single point of skill determination, which, in my opinion, is completely false. Because as it is in current MOBAs, there's a lot of stuff you have to know just to be good at the game. I mean, you have to know characters, you have to know cooldown timings, you have to know where to position, you have to know how far somebody can go with a skill, how much this damage this is going to do based on whatever items they have. Like, and that's all well and good. But at the same time, that's just information you need to know. That's it. It's just information. And when you deal with multiple maps, it's the same idea, just applied in a different kind of context, I guess.